Hello MotoGP fans and motorcycling enthusiasts. Today we have a very special episode for you and we have surely a very special guest here. Welcome our friend Neale Bayly. He is a MotoGP journalist, philanthropist, volunteer.
MotoGP fan, that's the most important.
That is
huge MotoGP
fan. That is actually how we got connected, how we made friends, okay? So let's talk about MotoGP. So guys, MotoGP brought us together and our channel is of course about MotoGP, so it would be logical if we talk a little bit about our favorite sport. Where did your passion for MotoGP start?
I went to see a MotoGP race, which would have been, I don't know if it was called MotoGP, but it was the 500.
Yeah.
In Donington Park, I think it was 1992, maybe. We had a very famous world superbike racer, Carl Fogarty.
Yeah.
He was four-time world champion, so I was a huge world superbike fan during that era, very exciting times. And he was riding a privateer bike that year. Kevin Schwantz was in the race, Wayne Rainey. I know Fogarty was doing extremely well, and then I guess he crashed. I think it was Kevin Schwantz crashed, and Fogarty crashed on his oil. And I'd been to Brands Hatch before and seen the Formula races, and so I was just kind of like, this was just amazing. And then we would get terrible television coverage of racing, and we would only get it every other, like a Thursday night for an hour, and quite often it would get bumped for baseball. So I always followed it in the magazines, the results. But then slowly we started getting it, but mostly World Superbike, and then obviously we started to get MotoGP on television. So I really have been a fan for 35 years maybe.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah,
35.
so I always followed the career of, Freddie Spencer, or Barry Sheen was our biggest hero. He was two-time world champion in 500, so as kids we all wanted to be Barry Sheen,
You are just a treasure, oh my God.
He was like the epitome of everything for us. He was a world champion, he had his beautiful girlfriend, he was one of the lads. I mean, he was a superhero in our world. So even though, Kenny Roberts came along at that time, Franco Ancini, and there was a lot of different riders, they were from somewhere else. We were always for Barry Sheen, that was our thing. So maybe even, I guess that's the 70s for me, as a kid growing up, and there was always like an old joke, like the police would pull you over for speeding and go, "Who do you think you are, son, Barry Sheen?" So yeah, I think it was sort of embedded in me quite early.
Do you have a favorite MotoGP season or maybe a race that you would rewatch during long winter breaks?
I think if you'd asked me that before the modern era of MotoGP, I would have gone back and watched some old races. But I think MotoGP racing today, the television coverage, the filming, and the commentators are so incredible that when you go back and look at older racing, it just doesn't. It's almost like going back to watch a black and white movie when you've watched
I watched that. Why? Yeah.
How do we like this stuff? There's no information, and the cameras are a million miles away, and now you're on board. So, yeah, I don't really. I mean, once in a great while, maybe I'll come across something and I'll watch it.
Okay, basically you want to say that you totally love this modern era of MotoGP, right?
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
I think we just, when you think what we used to on a Thursday night turn on the TV hoping to get some poor coverage years ago. And now, with the MotoGP app, I mean, you get to watch every session, you get to watch after the flag, I mean, you get to read about it. And, I think the commentators right now are so great. Yeah. I mean, they've always been good. I mean, but they're just, and then also, you have Simon Crawford.
Oh, I love him.
Well, he just brings this information to you in MotoGP that we didn't have before. We didn't know what frame someone was riding, or, oh, look, he's changed the angle of the forks, or he's dropped them lower down, or they're running new air, or this one's matching that one. So you get this.
We just can't know this information.
No, and it's almost like we're getting brought inside the garage.
Inside, yeah.
Into a level that we never were before. And then they all complement each other so well. The way they cut away, and then you get the interview with the team owners or the mechanics. So all of a sudden, there's other personalities in MotoGP other than the riders, the team owners and managers, and I don't know, it's so fantastic. It really does make looking at older ones go, why? How did we watch this stuff? You know?
Yeah, totally agree. I thought that a year, for example, 2007 was like top.
Yeah.
But last winter I tried to rewatch it, and no.
It is a bit difficult, isn't it? I mean, because it was amazing racing, but it's just the technology, the filming and onboards, and yeah.
Okay, so what about your favorite track? Do you have a favorite track?
I love Phillip Island because I've ridden there a number of times, and it is just one of the most breathtaking tracks to ride. I've ridden at Qatar, which is incredible also. Ridden at Portimao and Valencia. So I think for me, when I watch the races, and they're on a track that I know from being on the track, they have a different special feeling for me.
Guys, I have the information that Neale once rode a Valentino Rossi motorbike. How on earth was that even possible?
It was 2005. It was the year that he won the World Championship on the 990 M1. And in those days, on the day after the MotoGP, they would invite journalists, one from each country, to come and ride the bikes. And they'd also have some celebrities. I mean, I think one year I was there, Michael Schumacher was there before he had his accident. Another year, I think Michael Jordan was there. And then a lot of times there would be ex-world champions would come testing for certain countries. Yeah. Alex Crivilla was there one year. Nobby Ueda, who'd been a 125cc world champion, was there. Agostini was there one year. Giacomo Agostini was there. So, which was, I mean, I remember standing at the bar. It was my first opportunity to ride Valentino Rossi's bike, and I'm ordering a drink, and I look up and I go, oh, it's Agostini. You know, we had this little conversation about lemonade, and then he walked off, and I was like, wow.
That's it. So easy.
How does this happen?
Just Ago watching.
Just Ago, right? So I was selected in 2005 because I was a syndicated motor journalist at that time. And back in the day, they had these things called newspapers and magazines, if you can remember such things. Not just the things you put in your cat litter tray, you know, these were actually things that people read. You know? So I didn't get to ride Rossi's bike because of any great skill. I got to ride it because I had a bigger syndicated reach than a regular editor of a magazine, because I could publish in more publications. So I was chosen by Yamaha to go give the everyman's view of riding the bike, but they wanted it because they knew I could put it in big newspapers, syndicated magazines, and they were looking for exposure for this thing. And I actually wrote, when I wrote the story, I hummed and hawed for a long time, so I actually wrote about how I was sort of shitting my pants prior to riding the bike.
Right.
You know, and I thought at the time, oh, this is like death to my career, that I'm admitting that I don't know how to do this, and I'm completely out of my league, and this is the most horrible day of my life, you know. And actually, it's one of the stories that I still get people comment on that story to this day. Like, they talk about the time I wrote the story, and I wonder if it's because I just admitted to how scared I was, because I think anybody going to get on that bike would be so scared. And I was the last one on the list, right? And all day I'm watching all these greats of the most, you know, they had helicopters and TV crews and world champions, and here's my name at the bottom of the list. I'm like, what am I doing here, right? And I'm watching all these greats crash these bikes. I'm seeing them coming back on trailers, you know, guys coming back in the back of an ambulance. I'm thinking, and I'm just so scared all day. And I finally get to the pit, and I get onto the bike, and they bring the roller out, and they had a special guy just to open the petrol tank. He had a tool. One guy did that, another guy came. They did all this procedure. And right when I was getting out to ride the bike, the Australian crew chief or mechanic yells in my ear. And I'm thinking, this is it. This is where I get that.
There is no escape.
This is where I get this bit of advice that's going to calm everything down. And I didn't hear him. And I looked at him again, and he yelled again. And he said, "You crash this thing, we'll fucking kill you." And this is right before I got to go out and ride the bike. I was just like...
Just the words you want to hear. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I was expecting something, it's going to be okay, son, you're going to be fine, you know. And no, you crash, it will fucking kill you. So all day long, I'd watched people stalling. Kawasaki was in MotoGP at the time, and it was so loud. I was in pit lane with my earplugs and my fingers in my ears, and it was vibrating the walls and hurting my eardrums. And I watched journalist after journalist stall it, trying to get out of the pits on the Kawasaki, because I guess it was just, you know. So I was really nervous I was going to stall the bike, but I had no idea what it was going to be like, right? I'd never been to Valencia, never ridden the track. I'd managed to scrounge up a ride in a pace car for a couple of laps. And Alpine Stars had a video game, so I quickly played MotoGP video game at Valencia, which was quite backwards in those days, trying to get an idea where to go. And I started to let the clutch out and feed in the throttle. I was expecting, you know, Valhalla, and off it went. I thought, that's all right. And I just sort of gently rolled in the throttle. I thought, well, this is like a big R1, you know, Yamaha. It didn't feel like brutally fast. And during the race the day before, I'd watched Valentino come out of, I think it was like turn 5, and I'd heard him go through 3 gears up into the corner. So I was trying to get an idea of what to do. So I wobble around the track, and I get to this corner, and I start to open the throttle, and I'd counted how many gears Rossi had gone through. And I didn't even get into the power band, and I almost didn't stop in time for the next corner. I got there so fast. I'm like, how in the world did that happen? Like, I just had it was so much torque coming off that corner. So, of course, that first lap was just like this. And I'd been watching the guys all day long where they were braking for turn 1. And the only thing I said to myself is, I don't care how bad this is, I'm going full throttle down the straight. So 250 horsepower, 320 pounds, never ridden anything like this. So I wobble around, I get onto the front straight, I make sure the thing's going, and I just open it wide up. Rev comes up 15,600 RPM on the digital dashboard, full throttle, and I start banging downshifts, and all I can see was my little hands doing this, right? Because the front wheel, and I'm thinking, I should have asked them if it's got some sort of wheelie control, because I'm expecting I'm going to go right off the back, but somehow this thing stayed going down the straight. So I just kept it pinned, bang, bang. It was like some sort of explosion every time it changed gears, and it never slowed down. Like on a road bike, every time you change up, it kind of loses a bit of power. This one is just going faster and faster. So finally, I get up into 5th or 6th gear, and I see where I'm going to stop. And I roll the throttle off, go for the brakes, nothing happens. Whew. Pull the brakes, nothing. So in this split second, my whole career's gone. I'm in the kitty litter. Yamaha are never inviting me out again. Bike's wrecked. It's all over, right? My whole career is disappearing in a second, and I'm going straight for the kitty litter at 180 miles an hour, you know? And I'm pulling away on this brake, and all of a sudden the brake, it must have been the carbon fiber brakes, they got enough heat in them, and suddenly they worked. So the next thing is they stopped so fast, I'm downshifting and accelerating to even get to the corner. So I go from thinking I'm going to die in the kitty litter and it's all going to be over, to not getting to the corner fast enough. It stopped so quick. I mean, it's absolutely nothing you've ever experienced in your life. So I downshift, get into 2nd gear, and accelerate away, and then go and finish my laps. And I had 4 laps. Each time I did full throttle down the straight, and I think I got my knee down in a few corners where the camera guys were. I thought I've at least got to get but I think it was because the bike was straight up and down. I just hung off the side, you know, like I don't think I was really leaning it, you know.
Do you have some pictures?
I do, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So I thought I just got to get my knee down. That's all. And lap times, I don't know, they were probably tiny.
Knee down, full throttle. Okay.
That was the only, yeah. And so I finished my 4 laps, and I've never been so relieved in my life that I live to tell the story.
Finally, I'm done. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but these days, nobody is allowed to ride MotoGP bikes.
No,
right?
we don't go fast. Journalists can't go fast enough to put heat in the tires.
Yep.
So, and they're so expensive and so dangerous. And I mean, I just even remember that day. There was so many crashes that day. So I think I did get invited back in 2008 to ride Rossi's 800, and I've got to say that, because I knew the track, well, 4 laps experience, because of the experience on the 990, I actually was able to get going a little bit on the 800. I had 8 laps. So I actually really felt like after about 7 or 8 laps, I was starting to have a little bit of an idea about what it was like to ride. But you can't imagine the brakes on those things. Like everything about it was just so wrong for your brain. There's nothing you've experienced before in your life that can help you, if that makes sense. So yeah, and so now when I look at MotoGP, I always feel like, I've done a lot of track riding, a little bit of racing, a lot of testing, and obviously that's the wonderful thing if you're a track rider, is you get to feel like you're heroes because you're going around a racetrack with your knee on the floor. I mean, you're on a racetrack, but so at least I always feel like I've got this connection to MotoGP, having ridden one,
Yeah, haven't touched this treasure.
Yeah, just a little touch,
So guys, we are done with our MotoGP part here in the studio, and we are changing location. We are going to the park, and we will shoot there a small video about Neale's work here in Ukraine. Okay? Neale is a journalist, he's a photographer, he's a MotoGP fan. That is how we got acquainted. You are also a philanthropist?
Yes.
Who else are you? Tell us a little bit more.
Well, I've been a motorcycle journalist for nearly 25 years. And I started my foundation 15 years ago, raising money for abandoned children around the world. And I'm a father, have 2 boys, granddaughter, family man, motorcyclist, bicyclist, traveler. So,
Neale traveled, as far as I remember, more than 80 countries?
I think I've actually set foot in more than 80 countries, but that one, I would count going to some place in Africa where you got off the airplane for 1 hour and got back on. So maybe it's cheating, but I have ridden motorcycles in more than 50 countries.
So and also you've ridden through Ukraine, right?
Yes, twice.
In the year 2022, as far as I remember? Twice?
Yes, in 2022 we rode maybe 4,000 kilometers, maybe more. And then last year, again, I rode 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers in Ukraine.
On 2 wheels,
On
guys.
2 wheels, yeah.
During full-scale war. And you've been actively involved into humanitarian help amidst this ongoing war, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so as a motorcycle enthusiast, MotoGP fan, and a philanthropist, I realized that we all have tools to do a job. And for me, my tool is the motorcycle. I spent 2 decades riding motorcycles, reporting on the people that ride motorcycles. So I saw that my way to raise more money for people in need was to take motorcycle trips, write about it in magazines, make television shows. So I think maybe there are many people in Ukraine, perhaps the people I'm with now, they're delivering cars because they do the Land Rovers. Some people are here to take away the mines, some people are here to give medical assistance. So for me, my job is to tell stories with the motorcycle. So I came to Ukraine with the motorcycles to tell the stories of Ukraine. That was my goal. So that's why I came. And I think for me, having the motorcycle was an amazing opportunity to connect with people in Ukraine, maybe a little bit differently. I think sometimes journalists will come here. There's a journalist, they have a fixer, they have a car, they have things. But especially the second visit here alone with the motorcycle, I had to meet Ukrainian people and get help, and one person led me to the next person, to the next person. So it made for me, I think, a better experience to come to Ukraine.
Yeah, truly. Networking is a very powerful tool. That is how I met Neale. It's a very lovely story. As far as I remember, you tagged Simon Partison and his wife, Maddie. These guys are MotoGP journalists. And I saw this very touching signature under this photo that you are helping Ukraine together with Simon and all the other people. And I kind of said to myself, who the hell is this guy? I need him here right now. And like 2 weeks passed, and here we are in the center of Kyiv. We're having a beautiful weather, luckily without air raid alarms, without missiles flying, and so on and so forth. Lovely. Dreams come true. So I suppose we are done with our small intro, and let's get back to our questions.
Yeah.
And my first question is, why Ukraine?
I think that's quite easy for me when I look back now, because I work for the world's biggest photography exhibition every year in the United Arab Emirates. And what I do is I interview the photographers for the Sharjah Government Media Bureau to discuss their life in photography. And over the course of the time leading up to full-scale war, I was interviewing conflict journalists. And I was really digging into the lives of people that are covering conflict around the world. And then in 2022, I interviewed a journalist called Kieran Ridley. And as we were in the Middle East doing the interviews, it was the last days before February 24th. So all of the conversation at breakfast and lunch and dinner with the journalists is, will Russia attack? Is this going to happen? And then very quickly, a number of the journalists were changing plans to come to Ukraine. Heidi Levine for the Washington Post, Paula Bronstein, James Nackaway. When I came home to America and the war came on the television and very quickly, I was just like, what the fuck? Like, how can this happen in 2024? You know, suddenly the scenes of destruction and women and children and civilians and like, you know, so I just said I have to do something. You know, for 15 years I've been traveling to raise money for abandoned children and orphans and building community centers and houses and bridges and bakeries and schools and different things to help in the developing world. Right when I made this thought, Kieran, who I just interviewed in the Middle East, called me from Lviv. And
so he came directly from Middle East to Ukraine, right?
Yes, the newspaper sent him immediately.
Okay.
So he was covering the refugee crisis. Suddenly there was this set of circumstances. His wife had new babies, so there is my family at home. Everyone in Lviv, nobody knows what is happening.
Yeah.
He goes to the checkpoint and the young soldiers don't know why is he here with cameras. It's dangerous, even with inside, because of everything is so tense. And then he's trying to photograph the refugees, but there's 30 kilometers of people. So he got a small motorcycle to go, it's cold, it's freezing, is all this uncertainty. And then he is feeling guilty because he thinks he must go home for his family and stuff, but what if he leaves the people? So suddenly I had all of these emotions from him and the phone go dead. So for 3 days I don't hear anything.
And so from him?
From him, nothing.
You don't know where he is, what happened to him?
So then he showed up in Poland, very upset, you know, with everything is going on. So I said, hey, let me get some motorcycles. I'm a BMW expert for the brand, so I speak about BMW because 25 years, all my television shows and so many things with BMW. So I made a call and they said, yeah, we give you 2 bikes in Munich, which to me is fucking crazy, right? Like, we want to take these motorcycles to Ukraine. And then we started the process to, you know, tactical vests. I did combat lifesaver training for tourniquet and bullets and things. So, you know, get all of the equipment, press credentials, Ukrainian credentials, raising some money for the hospital Kieran was in. And then so we entered into Ukraine in the summer of 2022 and to Lviv, and we met with Andriy and Omil. We had Fixer that first year, and we set out to try and make the stories perhaps that you weren't seeing with the news. And my only goal was to help children that needed some help, and maybe to show the world what the journalists are doing. They have families, they have lives, they're human beings, they risk their life to tell the story. And if they didn't tell the story, and also one of the big things for Kieran was, you know, Putin immediately was killing journalists. Because if you kill the journalists, they can't tell the story.
There's no source of information.
No, and everybody in America where I live, everybody has this opinion of the war, but you don't have an opinion without a journalist. If there's no journalists in Ukraine, Putin just kills everybody, takes the country, is over, right? So I thought it was an important job to maybe let people understand what these journalists are going through, as well as what the children are going through. So that was really my whole goal that first year.
So you felt like you could not but
I had to come.
You had to come.
But I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea what I could do. I had no idea how things would be. And then we spent 3 weeks driving. We went different projects, coal miners, amputees, IDPs, internally displaced people, because not outside the country, and just talking with local people and traveling all around the country.
So again, networking.
Yeah, and
networking, talking. Yeah.
We went into Hostomel and Bucha and Irpin, and when you first see the damage, you change. When you first are in a place like you guys all live every day with missiles, but for us to come here first, to be in a city with missiles coming and things, exploding and fire, it's like you have to confront your own feelings, I think, so much. And everybody in Ukraine the first year it was very
tense.
Very tense for everybody, because nobody knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but during that first year, I think we really processed Ukraine through our feelings and got very connected with Andriy and Omel and everybody we met, and we made these friendships. So I went home at the end of 2022. I wrote many stories, podcasts, TV interviews. We were doing fundraising and just doing everything we could to keep everything rolling.
I remember you sent me a PDF version of Overland Journal, but I've read this article of yours, 5 Emotions of Ukraine, or from Ukraine, right? So I've read this article, but tell a little bit about this very article to our followers, okay?
Yeah, I think now it's very easy to look back with hindsight, but when I came out of Ukraine the first time, I think, like we talked about earlier, like I had to process being here through my own emotions. Even though I was interviewing people and writing stories about other people, it was very much how it was affecting me. And I went home, and I'm still very old school. I write with pen and paper. And suddenly I wrote a piece about fear. Like what real fear is compared to the idea of imagined fear. Maybe you can be afraid coming to Ukraine, but then when you get here and you realize this is fear. And then suddenly these things came: fear, shock, then anger, and then joy. The joy of leaving a place that's being hit and coming out and knowing you're okay is like quite overwhelming. And then finally love, and it was like how we processed Ukraine, I think, through our hearts and the people. So suddenly I had these 5 ideas, these 5 emotions, and then I know people in Overland Journal, I talk with them, and I wrote kind of an intro to let people know what we were doing, and then they ran these 5 individual pieces. So for me it was a very, very personal story. And that is that chapter, and then now we're moving on. I'm working on 2023.
2023, okay.
Yeah.
Great, guys. I suppose that I will be able to put a link to this very journal.
Yeah, I can give you the text maybe, or to even you can possibly buy the magazine if you would like. So.
We can. I don't think we can buy it here in Ukraine, but nevertheless, PDF link is just okay. I hope you can use it, and this article is highly recommended for you to read. It's just great. Wow, with marvelous pictures. Was that your pictures? Or?
No, the main pictures were from Kieran, and he won a world award for the photography. So he made exhibitions around the world, so I was able to use the photography. So it's the first time for me in my career as a journalist to put my words with world award-winning photography. I mean, I photograph, but my photography is not that standard. So it was this beautiful opportunity. And I think, so many times when you see a news reporter, over here is a blown up building, and over here is dead people, and they killed 17 over here. You don't know what that guy's feeling. So maybe it's selfish to give my own emotions when you're in a war for people that are suffering, or maybe it allows people to come in a bit to see what it feels like to be here. And it definitely shaped 2023, because when I came back in 2023, I came alone. I think I was finished with processing it myself, and what I realized was everybody in Ukraine suddenly had a story where they were at 5 a.m. February 24th and where they are now, but you guys can't tell that story to each other because you all have the same story. True. And as an outsider coming in, everybody can tell me the story. Even our cameraman, Sergei, over here, without knowing it, told me the same story when we were walking here. How he brought his mother-in-law, his grandmother, everybody to this underground place, what it was like in the beginning, because everybody has that story, but you can't tell the story to other people that had it. So I was able to sit with many people to have that story, which was fantastic. So I'm working on a series of stories about all of those interactions with people. This was so different to 2022, and nobody knew what was happening. Suddenly there was some sense of order to being in Ukraine. Everybody has the app on the phone, they go to Telegram, they know where the missiles, they know what their life maybe is about now. So I was able to take myself out and just have the conversations with people.
The work you do is very important for us because as far as I feel, as far as I understand, there are fewer and fewer news in Europe, in the US about the current situation in Ukraine. People starting to forget about us. They normalize this war, right? So you're doing a very important job.
I think what they've done is they've created, media is making money from Ukraine by forcing people in America to argue with each other about aid or assistance or whatever. And in the early part of the war, people would say, oh, it's great you're going to Ukraine, but what about this? And in the beginning of the war, they were all upset about dirty water in Jackson, Mississippi. And then they got all upset about homeless people in Los Angeles or Chicago. And now they're all upset about the border. So the media gives them something to be angry about. So then they feel personally that they're losing something. My money, why is our money going? And also on the one hand, they feel very educated about Ukraine because they know all the shit that they get told about the country. But then they say, where do you stay? And I say, well, I stay in a hotel. Where do you think? And then they say, where do you get gas?
Shock.
And I say, in a gas station. So they are so knowledgeable about Ukraine and the government and all of this stuff, but they don't even know that Ukraine has hotels and gas stations. And it's like, so it's kind of mind-blowing, really. So hopefully my stories and what I do allows people, at least on a personal level, to try to understand something about Ukraine.
So, Neale, your current mission in Ukraine, 2024, is called Operation Freelander. What a poetic name. I totally love it. So, you bring 2 Freelanders here in Ukraine, and as far as I remember, it's a 7th and 8th car, right?
Correct.
These cars were intended for Anna Grichishkina. I hope, guys, you know her, you remember her. But for some reasons,
just paperwork. Yes, paperwork. Yeah, she changed the vision, and it was too difficult to get the correct. You have to have the right paperwork to bring them in. So what we'll do is, when things sort out a little easier for her, we'll bring her another one.
So my question is, how did you find people who need these cars here in Ukraine? Is it again networking, or is it some volunteer organizations, or how this chain works?
So it's always this chain of networking. Kieran, my friend, photographed Olena, and excuse me, I don't remember her first name, but she was the first lady to go on the cover of newspapers all around the world. When the first day of the war, she had the bandages in her eye. It was the first image of the war. And Kieran had the assignment to interview her. So I met her. It was my first introduction to the war outside of Ukraine. So we went to see her a couple of times, and she's a beautiful, sweet lady, and lost so much with this house and operations. So I promised her when I came last year I would go to see her in Kharkiv. And I went out to Kharkiv to see her, and there was a gentleman there called Gordon, and there was a Freelander, all camouflage, full of supplies in the parking lot. And I said, this is very interesting. Who are you? What is happening here? And Gordon told me the story of how he started Operation Freelander. So when the war broke out, he started to bring insulin and supplies to Poland. Met some boys,
some medical stuff,
medical
some drugs.
supplies. Then he met boys going to the front line with no proper shoes and stuff, so he started bringing equipment. And then somebody said, we need cars on the front line. So at the same time, Sue and Norbert, the people that are with me, they are working on they work on Freelanders as their business. They said, hey, what do we do? So they source these cars, donation or buy very cheap. They take them to the workshop. They completely go through them. Sometimes they put a new engine, 6 brand new tires, new wheels, spare wheel, everything. Belts, hoses, oil. Gordon paints them NATO green, camouflage, and then they fill them full of supplies and drive them to Ukraine. So they have driven 6 cars already. So when I met Gordon, I said, this is a story we should tell.
Yeah.
It's regular people getting involved, helping out, making a difference. I really want to bring media attention to Operation Freelander, because this is something we did when we were children. We would raise money to buy Land Rovers to go to Africa for famine and aid. So for me now, to be an old man, I can look back and say, this is what we did when we were children. Now this is the same project. So they prepared these Freelanders, we raised the money for the cars and to travel, and then we came here to Ukraine, 4 days driving. Now we met you.
I totally love this story. Imagine, guys, we're not talking about some big organizations like Red Cross, like United Nations, and so on and so on. Just volunteers,
yes,
philanthropists,
and
who
the
are
thing
eager
is,
to help.
and they will never get onto the news.
Yes.
They will never have a big story in a magazine, because media wants sensation.
Yes.
They want this big idea. But what about, everywhere in Ukraine there are people helping. Every Ukrainian is helping. Like, there's 1,000 stories you could tell every day about people building drones, taking care of children, having people live in their house. There's so many stories. And so I just said this story, I think, is Gordon and Sue and Norbert are giving of themselves all the time. They're so passionately involved to bring these cars to Ukraine, and no one's going to tell their story. So I felt my job is to tell their story. Now you're telling their story, to bring more attention to what they're doing.
Bring intention, yeah, and also you are raising morale of
and it's just,
Ukrainians.
like you talk about networking. So when I came to Ukraine in 2022, I went to the doctor to get an injection in my knee from crashing motorcycles.
You mean you had this injection back in the
America,
UK? Or?
Yeah. The doctor and the guy, they know my stories from the magazines because they're motorcycle guys, and they were military surgeons, Afghanistan, Iraq. So immediately they sent me to training. This trip, 100 pounds of medical supplies, tourniquets, splints, hemostatic bandages, chest seal wounds, everything. So we have a car full of stuff that they donated. So again, the networking,
Networking.
Yeah, and these are the stories that won't get told. And again, there's so many stories. And you asked me a question earlier, what were some of my most amazing moments in Ukraine? And I think, the moment that lit up the idea for my stories in 2023, I was at a petrol station or gas station, somewhere between Dnipro city and Kharkiv. Very rural, go to the gas station, no one can speak to me, I can't speak to people, nobody knows who you are with the motorcycle. So I would just get gas and go. And there was an old lady who helped me find the bathroom. And then I'm outside having a coffee, and she's old babushka,
Old babushka.
She has the big hands, like she's been doing brickwork her life like this, and she came out, and somehow we were able to explain that I came from America. She's smiling and crying and hugging, and we're just having this amazing moment. And that was the moment I realized, look, if that's all I can do here is make her day better because I'm here, then it's okay. Not look for the big story. It's about people, and that was what got me understanding. I must tell the story of regular people everybody in Ukraine is suffering. There's not one person. We're in a park here, this gentleman is walking his dog. Maybe his son is fighting, his wife is anything. Every single person here has a story of suffering, and you guys are really good at hiding your suffering because you're very strong.
During your time in Ukraine, you've encountered many challenging situations. Could you share a specific story where you felt your efforts directly impacted the lives of those affected by the war?
Everybody that's helping Ukraine feels the same way, that we're not doing enough. I think Anna feels she's not doing enough. I always feel we're not doing enough. So I think it's very hard. I have to try and think maybe back to the lady at the gas station.
Okay.
Just knowing that in that moment she felt joy that I was here, because if you think about everything, it's too overwhelming for one person, and we can only look at our efforts as so small. If you think, it's very difficult. There's a huge war, and then when you look at your efforts, you think, okay, we come 2 cars, some supplies. We need 2,000 cars. So it's very difficult to think how we can impact. But maybe maybe one person will get something from us being here that can change everything. You know, I mean, look at Mandela, I mean, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, I mean, Dr. Paul Farmer, Partners in Health. Sometimes one person can change. And, you know, I was back to the war journalists that I was interviewing, the conflict journalists back in 2021. I listened to a man speak called Giles Dooley. And he has one arm, lost both legs, one arm in an IED covering war in Afghanistan.
IED?
The explosion took his legs and his arm. And 46 days he laid like, couldn't communicate as they were working. And somebody asked him in the talk, do you think your photographs can change the world and stop the war? And he said, I don't know about that, but I just hope that my work changes someone. And I hadn't gone to a war zone, I hadn't covered war. I mean, I'd been in war, but not like that. And maybe his talk was the inspiration for me to, when the war came, to come and do something. So maybe that's how we have to feel, is that somebody will see the work we're doing and be motivated. Because I think it's really hard to think, oh, I've made your life better, or I'm making people's lives better. Does that make sense? It's very difficult to feel like that, because we always feel like we must do more.
You are making my life better right now, for sure. You can't imagine what a big impact you are already making on my life. So,
thank you. Yeah, it's tough. I talked with I have a really dear friend in America who's done so much helping orphans come out of Ukraine. They have a safe house here in Ukraine for all their workers. They put houses in Romania. They bring people to America. And she was just midnight on the phone to me, like that same feeling of we must do more, we must do more. And it's like somehow we have to find a system for people that are helping to say it's okay, we're just small people and we just do the best we can. And maybe that's the answer, is like, don't feel overwhelmed if all you can do is give $10 or make a camouflage net or make a sandwich. I mean, you're doing something.
True.
We don't have to, you know, bring $60 million worth of weapons. We just have to bring some hope. And because if we all just do a little bit, like and then again, back to what I said, every person in Ukraine is doing something, but the world doesn't know that. No one's telling that story because they're all looking for the big story.
I don't know how to articulate this correctly, but I will say, it might seem a very small help. It might seem to be a very small help, but it is a very big help. Kind of like this. I hope you can feel this.
It's a difficult question because of how we feel, you know.
Reflecting on your journeys and the intense situations you faced, how has your understanding of home evolved? Does the concept of home now has a different meaning for you?
I think I've been traveling for a long time, and I was very conflicted last year when I went back to England about what is my home. I'm originally from England, but I've lived a long time in America, and I've always thought of my home in England. And when I came from Ukraine last year, I was very conflicted. Is this really my home? My mother is gone, things were different. And then slowly I accepted it was home. And I think it changed me and what I think about home. But I think when I think about home, I think for everybody here, there's such a strong sense for people here of this is your home. So I know I'm turning your question a little bit around. But
that's what I wanted to hear, yeah. You're on the right way.
And I think that this might sound really weird, but when you can, to say that you can feel a little bit envious or jealous of this spirit that Ukrainian people share together, of their home and how patriotic they are to their country, you know, and people fighting together. And you know, this is a beautiful country, and it's so clean and it's so well organized, and you know, it's like, it's a beautiful, beautiful country. And you can feel that patriotism in people for their country. I mean, people are fighting and dying for their country every day here. And I think our perception of home sometimes in England and America is just to argue with our neighbor because we have a different politics or skin color is different or something. You know, like there's some bullshit to make everybody argue, and that's missing here now. And I don't know from before, but so I definitely feel you guys are home. This is your home, and you're all fighting for your home. And that's impressive to come here and see that.
So thank you, Neale, for sharing your insights, your incredible stories, and some final thoughts.
I would thank you, everybody, for listening. And like you said, this beautiful world that we have around motorcycling that allows us to be friends immediately and share. So big thank you to Simon and Maddie, really, for introducing us and making it happen. And again, they're not in the limelight for what they're doing for Ukraine. They're just bringing aid, they're bringing help, they're connecting people, and they're part of that army of people that are helping and working for Ukraine. So thank you, Simon, thank you, Maddie, and thank you for having me, thank you for filming, and thank you guys for listening. And if you can do something to help Ukraine, please do. That's why we ride motorcycles, is to connect with people. And we have so much. I'm sure we can all miss a tank of fuel to make a donation, or we can go rifling through our closets and send some stuff to help. So.
Okay, guys, so we talked a lot about networking, about not keeping silent, right?
Yeah.
About commenting, about making friends, and so on and so forth. We never know where this communication and networking can bring us. So again, thank you, Neale. Thank you, Simon, to whom it all became possible. Thank you to our beautiful hobby, MotoGP. Thanks for racing that brought us all here together, right? So guys, what I'm trying to say is that all your likes, comments, and shares, they do matter. Networking matters. So yeah, please, we're waiting for your likes, for your comments, for your opinions. Thank you for being with us. Take care. We love motorsport. Bye. Thank you.